Hey, and what I Heart Intellectual Radio, the Chronicles of Rohn. I am your host, Alan J. Campbell, aka Dark Knight. Hey, y'all, it's good to be back after being off for 2 weeks. Had a nice little vacay and what have you. But we're gonna jump right into some things tonight. Going forward, I want to let you all know right away before we get too deep into this, and it's going to be a lot of technical language used tonight. And it does. And when I say technical language, meaning I'm referencing legal jargon and how the court in our court system. Phone lines, I'm gonna open the phone lines up at 9:10, exactly 9:10. If you want to chime in on this topic, tonight's topic is called the Jason Van Dyke Trial. Now, what we have here, and for those who are or not familiar with this, okay, this is the cop, the Chicago police officer who is on trial right now for the shooting death of 17-year-old, 18-year-old McDonald. Now now the trial has already started. They had opening arguments today. Now, and if you happen to be at home tomorrow, this trial is expected to last 3 weeks. Now, if you're at home tomorrow, you can actually watch this trial live, everything blow by blow, motion by motion, objection by objection, start to finish on CLTV. If you have Comcast, it's channel 352. Tune in tomorrow morning about 9 a.m. This will be day 2 of this trial. Now, watching the open arguments. Now today, Jason Van Dyke declared that he wanted a jury trial. Now he declared that under the contention that he could actually have a change of venue. Now, this is the part where we're going to get into the legal part of this thing here. What we need to understand is, as Black people and the rest of the world, an individual once charged with a crime, and what they sometimes tend to do is motion the courts for a change of venue. And what that is that a person says they want their case heard not only by in a different county, but they want it heard by a different judge, and they want a different jury pool, meaning that, for example, Jason Van Dyke's team motioned the judge today for a change of venue. They wanted, because Van Dyke's lawyers contended that he could not get a fair trial in the city of Chicago or in Cook County due to all the politicizing and the media pressure. Now let's get one thing straight, people. October 20th, 2014 is when this incident happens. Here we are just going to trial. This is 4 years later. 4 years later. And we would not have gotten to this point had it not been for a journalist who motioned the courts to release the dash cam videos of all squad cars that were there when this incident took place. Now, if this cop feels that he did no wrong, then he shouldn't have a problem with the video, with what's on video. But we've all seen the video of this 18-year-old Black male walking down the middle of the street and being cornered, not so much as cornered, wrong word, but being approached by police officers, 2 of which jump out of their car. Joseph Walsh and Jason Van Dyke. Jason Van Dyke is the one who fired the lethal shots. Joe Walsh is Van Dyke's partner. Now, in today's proceedings, the judge denied a lot of the defenses, which he very well should have, because once your jury is seated and has been sworn in, filing a motion for change of venue kind of goes out the window. Because because you already have the jury that's seated. We're not going to go pool another, because he feels that I can't get a fair trial here in Cook County. And this is what they wanted the trial actually move to Will County or DuPage, which is what? Pretty much Lily White. and probably people who have no idea what is going on with the rest of the world. Now, under the Constitution, an individual has that right to do that if he feels that the said known county will not be favorable for him. But during a lot of the arguments, now Jason Van Dyke also had an opportunity too. He had a choice to either have a bench trial or a jury. Jason chose a jury. Now, for those who don't understand the difference that between the two, um, a bench trial is just basically where it's just four people: the judge, state or district attorney, prosecutor, and the defense team, and the accused. Four people, and usually that kind of takes place right there. And in turn, and in legal terms, it's called a 402 conference. Basically, it's just you all deciding what you want to do, how you want to do this. And then with a bench trial, the judge is the one who decides the fate of the individual. He's the one that decides that whether to decide on which side actually um, prove their case. Now, Jason Van Dyke took a jury trial because in his mind, he feels that he's done no wrong. But naturally, when a white police officer shoots a black citizen, of course they feel that they've done no wrong. Now, don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. I am not villainizing. I'm not demonizing or making police be the villain. I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. But right is right and wrong is wrong. Okay, it's just that simple. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Very simply cut. Now, when this individual was shot 16 times, 16 times, which means that Jason Van Dyke not only emptied his clip, he stopped, reloaded, and continued to fire. Now, we have to understand something. We have to understand police techniques, and we have to understand police policy also. We have to understand the two. Remember now, this is looking at things from both sides. And we have to be, when we talk about things like this, we have to learn to be objective also. See, sometimes we look at things as black and white and forget that there's a gray area in there. And it was mentioned to me just shortly before I went on the air that um, that some people would have preferred that the judge had been black who is overseeing this case. Well, and I said, well, the thing is that yeah, you do, but you don't want that. You don't want it to look as if it's racial, it's racial, even though for some of us it appears that way. But having a black judge overseeing this situation involving a dead black man, you don't want this, because if this guy get convicted, you don't want it coming back on a technicality saying that the judge was showing favoritism to the victim and not the defendant. You don't want that to happen. Whereas you have a white judge here who has nothing vested in this. He has no aspirations one way or the other for this to. He just wants the truth to come. He wants to be able to decipher the truth and only the truth. This is nothing. There's no more. There's nothing for him to gain but to oversee this trial, because it is a very heated and contested trial. Very heated. Now, on the jury panel, you have 12 people. So right now, the jury pool there is, I believe there's 6 white women, 1 black woman, 5 Hispanics, and I think it's an Asian woman. Now, the shocking part about this is that there are no men on the jury. And sometimes when you're doing jury selection between the 2 attorneys that are doing jury selection, the idea is that you want to find people who sympathize with the victim, But also under the Constitution, you have a jury of your peers, which to a certain degree is a fallacy, because you have to understand something. when you reference someone's peers, your peers are the individuals that you all travel in the same circles. And these people who sit on the jury are not law enforcement. So it's kind of it's kind of a sail in the wind. It's full, then it's empty. It's full, then it's empty. So it's kind of a touchy thing. But nevertheless, this is where we are. Nevertheless, the also thing legal analysts were referencing to is that they were a little surprised that there were no men and there were not more African Americans, as they put it. No, I just say how could there were no more blacks. Well, that was purposely done because you don't want this to appear racial. Even though most of us I know, even though most of us see this, we have to look at it from the legal aspect because you don't want this to come back on that small technicality of racial bias. This is what you don't want. And the worst thing is that okay, and should he get convicted, naturally he's entitled to appeal this, in which he's subject to do. Okay. And one of the things that people say, well, he's charged with murder. Well, understand the thing about murder. With murder, you have to prove intent. So when you say intent, we don't know what was in this man's mind at the time he discharged his firearm. We don't know that. We can assume, but we know what happens when you assume. But as the trial goes on and more of the evidence comes out, see what you do when the prosecution or the state's attorney charges an individual, when they charge them with the highest crime, because that gives them some wiggle room. See, the whole idea is they want a conviction no matter what. But you charge them with a higher crime, such as first capital murder, first degree murder, and then you have murder, and then you have murder with mitigating circumstances. There are different aspects of murder. Then when you get past that, then you go down to manslaughter. You could either be voluntary or involuntary, one of the two. See, they're looking at, but either one of those avenues, murder or or manslaughter, you're getting some jail time. Period. You're getting jail time. One is a class X felony and another one is a class 1 felony. But you're getting jail time. And should he get this, say it's manslaughter. Manslaughter, he's looking at 17 years. Period. He's got to do that. No good time, no nothing. He's looking at 17 years. But also there are other mitigating circumstances, and mitigating circumstances in the legal world, meaning that there are other things that played a factor into this. Other factors, meaning that, for example, they can charge him with 16. They have charged him with 16 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm. That means that people say, well, that's one shot, that's one charge. Yes, you can do that. If you understand, this is one of the reasons why I say all the time on my show, all the time, we have to read more and understand how this really works. If this was a regular Joe who did this, not only would he not have not only would he wouldn't be out on bond. He wouldn't be walking through the court doors with a bulletproof vest. He wouldn't have all this media coverage. He would just be some Joe locked in the deep dungeons of the tombs of Cook County Jail right over here on 26 in California. But the fact that this is a high profile case, and the fact that all the media sensation, and the fact that the question is who knew and when did they know? Now, just to sidebar for a moment, shortly before everything began to start with Jason Van Dyke, I believe was everything took place September 5th. Now, the day before, the mayor of the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, announced that he was not seeking re-election. Okay, now we already got a crowded pool of people. Like I say, I'm just going to sidebar for a moment on this, and then once I do the wraparound, you'll understand. He's not seeking re-election. Okay, the reason why he's not seeking reelection because he may be one of the potential witnesses for the state to testify, as well as the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, Eddie Johnson. So see, you have to tread this lightly, and the whole idea is that the whole understanding is that they want to question Emmanuel on when did you know about the tape? Did you see the tape? When did you know about it? And what did you do when this came out? And this is with Eddie Johnson and Rahm Emanuel, which is why Rahm Emanuel is trying to head for the nearest sunset he possibly can find. Because see, when you look at this type of case, this type of case, there are a lot of people who were involved and a lot of high ups that knew about this, but they all signed off on the bull. They all signed off on it. Now what's happening now the chickens have come home to roost because now there's no place for anyone to hide. No place. Point blank period. Because everybody's going to wind up sitting at this table and getting a finger chopped off because they're active participants in this. This is one of the things that why now the mayoral race is so wide open because everybody wants to sit on the fifth floor, but nobody has a real plan on certain things that they need to look at and rectify. Now, just like I say, I'm not going to get too far off under the mayor thing, but personally, my opinion, what and I think was there 5 blacks running? I believe there's 5 blacks running. What they should do, personally, is that everybody back one candidate and you let somebody else do all the financing, and then you will definitely wind up winning. Right now, you got what's the guy's name? Gary McCarthy, who's truly the front runner right now. And I put it to you this way: I'm seeing the dark horse in this race. You got Gary McCarthy, possibly Willie Wilson, and Jamal Green. I'm seeing those 3 people right there. And Jamal Green might be that dark horse. Truth be told. Truth be told. But back to Jason Van Dyke, a lot of this is stemming from this, and Mr. Green said something that was really, I mean, that's a really good idea. Just to piggyback off of that, what he said a lot of these incidents that you have with police officers and shootings can be rectified is that each officer must carry a form of insurance. I think he said something like $1 million insurance or something about liability to where if there's any type of wrongdoing or any type of wrongdoing or there is a police involved shooting where a death occurs, you're not suing the city, you're suing an individual. I think it's a fantastic idea. I really do, because what that does is that makes that holds an individual accountable. If you are out there and you're caught with police corruption or misconduct, it makes that individual accountable. And right now, what's happening is that the special prosecutor for this trial for Jason Van Dyke, he wants to hold people accountable for their actions. You knew this was wrong. You knew that this was not the things you should be saying. You are a sworn officer of the law. You took an oath and you broke that. Now, here's the other funny part about this. There are 6 police officers who have been under indictment, who were on the scene that night, are now have been indicted. Now, of the 6, 3 officers were offered immunity to testify against the other officers. Now, when the state's attorney or when you're offered immunity, that means that basically they don't have anything on you, but they know that they have enough information, you have enough information on the other person that they figure that, well, if you don't tell us, we'll just pin everything on you. Now, watching the trial today, they had one of the officers that they had offered full immunity. Now, what that means when they offer immunity, that means that any past deeds that you may have done or been involved or you may be under investigation currently, they're going to let that go. They're not going to pursue that. But in return, you got to give them something. So one of the officers that they had on the stand today was one of those officers that they had offered immunity to. But the funny part about this is that this watching this is once again watching the systemic blue. I mean, um, it escapes me the code of the code of blue, protect one another, and sitting there and watching it literally unfold as this officer was asked direct questions, and all of a sudden she had a lapse of memory. Now, one of the questions was presented to her as, well, you had a radio in your hand, and and they asked her about the radio traffic um, after the shooting. Her words were, I don't recall any radio traffic. And then they asked her a second question, where were you in proximity of the offender after the shots were fired? Her words were, well, I was a few feet from the body. So the state played the dash cam video, and he paused it at the point to where this officer was getting out of a vehicle, and he walked over to her, and they had a split screen, and he pointed to her on the video getting out of the vehicle. He says, well, if this is the body, where are you in this shot? He goes over to the other side of the screen. He said, is this you getting out of the vehicle? She said, yes. Well, how can you be getting out of the vehicle near the body, but yet just getting out of your vehicle? Her words were, oh, you know what? I can't recall what I did that night. So this once again is police officers lying for other police officers. This is the very reason on why a lot of them are catching hell right now, because bottom line is very simply put, we all know that it's against the law to lie to police officers. Or if you don't know, it is. It's actually a felony to lie to police to law enforcement. Let me say it that way. It's a class 2 felony to lie to law enforcement. Well, why doesn't the same apply to police officers who are involved in wrongdoing to when they lie to other police officers? Why isn't that the same? Why isn't that the same? Why aren't they held to the same standard as myself, as my chief engineer, as any number one of us as citizens? We lie to police, we go into jail. Period. It's not even open for discussion or debate. But these police officers lied to other police officers, and then here's the funny part: these officers knew that their colleagues were lying, and still took the report and sent it upstairs for the supervisor to sign off on it. The supervisor, in turn, now he catching hell because now this is starting to fall apart. And some of that, watching the trial today, you're watching the defense, their case literally fall apart because they have some of the they basically, the state got the right people on the stand, and the defense has no idea what to do because now they're catching them up in their own lies, especially when we have social media the way we have it now, especially when we have the video that shows every single thing. Now, the Fraternal Order of Police, the president anyway, and naturally he has to come out and say these things to appear supportive of this officer. He goes on to say, well, the video doesn't show everything. It doesn't show from the time of this to the time of that. Well, that's just their way of saying, we made a mistake, we're not sure, or whatever the case may be. It's asinine to watch these people continue to lie and think that it's okay. But the problem is that they've been doing it for so long till it becomes habit. It becomes natural. How many of us have ever run across a person to every word that comes out their mouth is a lie? And then what happens is that they lie so much till it becomes natural. You don't know what to believe. But for them, their lies become truth. And then they begin to believe it. And this is what's happened within the Chicago Police Department. And that's not to say that every department is really bad. You just have some bad apples among some good fruit. That's the truth of the mess. And that's the truth of it. That is the absolute truth. But just those few bad apples makes it difficult for any of us to believe or to trust in law enforcement or to trust in the system that it's going to be fair and impartial. That's the key word, fair and impartial. Right now, Jason Van Dyke is sitting on the other side of that, sitting on the other side. Now, the part about his two lawyers, they're FOP paid lawyers, meaning the Fraternal Order of Police. The police union is paying for these lawyers. Now, the lead counsel, I forget his name, he has represented two other police officers in certain cases, which he's lost. I'm not sure if this is the guy I want representing me. I really don't. I really don't, especially when it involves police shooting, police corruption. I don't want this guy. No, I really don't. But right now, this is we're at a point now, and we have people out in front of the Cook County courthouse protesting. I mean, and it's just not black people; it's blacks, it's whites, it's Hispanics, it's Asian, it's all of these people who make up this great city. But at the end of the day, right is right and wrong is wrong. At the end of the day, this was this was a situation should have never gotten to this point. Now, the other part where I said that the defense was tripping over, was actually getting caught in their lies and tripping over their own story, is when you look at the video and each witness that got on the stand and they were asked direct questions. At what point does Laquan McDonald become a threat? That is going to be the quintessential linchpin of this trial. At what point does Laquan McDonald become a threat? One of the police officers who testified early today stated that Mr. McDonald was never a threat. And I'm paraphrasing. He stated that Mr. McDonald never made an aggressive move toward him or was a threat. I want you all to think about that for a minute. Think about that, because how many times have we heard this comment from a law enforcement community saying this individual was a threat? First and foremost, when police officers encounter black men, they already perceive us as a threat when we're just on a bus, standing on a corner, in a car. They perceive us as that automatically. So they already have they already have a perception already that this is who we are. This officer stated also that he never really came in contact with Laquan McDonald. He kept his distance, as they say. He kept it 15 to 20 feet. Now, in law enforcement, there's a rule, there's a guideline actually, and it's called the 21-foot rule, meaning that if a person is within 21 feet of you, they are a potential threat. Now, being more specific, if that individual is upright, that person is standing on his own 2 feet, say with a weapon, yes, they are a potential threat. Laquan McDonald had in his possession a 3-inch knife. We're not disputing. Nobody's going to dispute that. He had a knife in his hand. And where this and how we got to this point of where it stemmed from. Laquan McDonald had accosted a gentleman it started in a truck yard, and McDonald and another individual had a brief had some words. The man was petrified, and the man was Hispanic. He was petrified, and he called police. police arrived, and the first responders or first responding officers came and they encountered him, but they never really made contact. They said, the officer stated, well, McDonald never really looked at us. He always kept his back to us, and he never made any type of aggression. He never was aggressive. There was no aggression or made aggressive moves. And it goes back to my question: at what point did Laquan McDonald become a threat? Was he a threat because he was black? Was he a threat because he was all but 6'2" and some change and a frame? Was it because he had braids? Was it because he was in an area that he had no business in? When did he become a threat? Hey, welcome to iHeart Intellectual Radio, the Chronicles of Rohn. Who do I have on the phone, and where are you calling from?
This is Jay from Georgia.
What's happening?
All right, so let's answer your question as quickly and as fluidly as we can. At what time did he become, or at what point did he pose a threat? I think that is a very loaded question, because in the society in which we exist, the African American male, particularly, is always an assumed or a presumed threat. The challenge in this particular encounter is there are 2 points in which the African American or the black person is a threat. There's the presumed threat, and then there's the apparent threat. The assumed threat is the fact that you're breathing. That's presumed. The fact that you're breathing and you have the capability, because in their mind and in their indoctrination, you are the loose rabid dog running past their picnic in the park without a leash. So that's the apparent or the presumed threat that is always evident. You always have that looming piece or that looming presumption about you. That's why you are looked at in a predatory manner in any capacity when you are first approached by law enforcement, period, point blank. Now, when that threat becomes apparent is after they have some level of legality by which to pin you as a threat. So do you see the difference?
Oh, yeah.
So there's the presumption of a threat, which you just have inherently. And then there's the apparent threat, which is at any point in time that they now have the legality in which to respond to that threat. And what we have to quit dancing around is this is a bigger issue that has to be dealt with. And the issue stems around the idea of citizenship or not. And until people understand that how you handle a citizen and how you handle a subject, those are worlds of difference. And we are indoctrinated that we are all citizens and that we are all free and that we are all of the same when we're not. There is a class system that is very active and that is very apparent, because these instances that we keep finding ourselves in make these situations apparent in the class level that we are. Case in point is the situation that happened a few weeks ago in Dallas, where we had a police officer who, and the story's changed 5, 6, 7 times, but the gist of the story is a police officer who is in a high-risk warrant elite team of police officers got off from a 14-hour shift, went to the wrong apartment. Her apartment, along with everyone else's apartment in that building, has electronic keys. Her keys not working. She puts her groceries down, whatever she has in her hand, and now she's accosted by seeing this black man who, as she appears, or as she is presuming, is in her apartment, standing there half naked. And without any sort of thinking, I guess, she fires 2 rounds right into his chest, killing the man. Later determined She's on the wrong floor. She's at the wrong apartment. Meanwhile, this person is shot dead in their own home, just trying to live their life. But the interesting thing about this is the evidence is now trying to pinpoint that this particular person who was gunned down in their own home had traces of marijuana, a police backpack, other police equipment in their apartment.
So the story.
We don't know what the police officer had in her apartment. We just know what the victim had in their apartment.
So the story.
Investigation.
So the story continues, or they continue to create a narrative to demonize the victim.
Correct. The victim, again, there is the apparent threat, and then there's the presumed threat.
Now, to go into the thing about the shooting in Dallas. Now, a lot of people were wondering, okay, and they were wondering, okay, who actually has jurisdiction on investigating the crime, and the truth, and the fact that people need to understand is that when there is a police involved incident or something like that, a police department cannot investigate itself. So you have to go to an outside agency, such as you have to go to, say, the sheriff's department, and beyond the sheriff's department, then you have the state police. Now, in Texas, now when it's involving a police department, a member of the police department or official, that falls into the hands of the Texas Rangers, who handles that. My understanding is that once they realized what they were dealing with, and then the woman was eventually arrested, and they actually told Dallas not to charge her until they completed certain preliminaries of their investigation, because basically the Texas Rangers wanted to charge her, so they know that there is no there's no break in chain of custody and procedure on how this is to unfold. Now, the problem, like you indicated, is that now they're trying to demonize this man who was apparently a church going individual. I believe he was a youth pastor, my understanding, a youth pastor, and they're talking about they're finding small traces of marijuana in his apartment and various other things. But once again, it goes back to what you said, that if you got into, first of all, you got into the building, and second, if you will have electronic keys, it's like and for people to understand, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong, it's the key apparently the key that they have to get into their units are like hotel keys. That key is key to that particular room or unit. It can't open anything else other than something that are common areas, such as the pool or the laundry room or something like that. This is one key to one location, but she said, "Oh, this." She thought that she somehow knows. She thought she was in the wrong. She realized she was in the wrong apartment. Now let's just spitball this for a minute. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, maybe these two had a thing going and it went sideways, and it was more convenient for her to get rid of him and make it look like this went sideways without having to worry about certain repercussions. You know.
Well, that all of that is possible. The challenge that I have is two things. Now, her account is one way, which is, oh, I was tired. I went to the wrong apartment. My key wasn't working. I put my bags down. I looked up. It's a person standing in front of me who I didn't recognize. Now, and here's what people have to understand. And this is where we have got to be very clear in how this entire situation of law enforcement, which has now become animal catchers or animal control, has gotten out of hand. As a officer, your job, even if you were at your own home, should not have been immediately to just completely annihilate the situation. The next thing is there are several neighbors who have a completely different account of what happened. Several neighbors who have gone on record to say that they heard her bamming outside his door saying, "Open up, let me in." The other thing is, as you said earlier, this young man was
He was a youth pastor.
He was also a singer. He was also a very A-class worker for PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is a very prestigious auditing and accounting firm. So people had to be very careful in understanding what this person might have even actually seen, heard, or been privy to. Because they have confiscated his laptop, just so you know. They have confiscated the electronic locks on both his door and the officer's door, who, by the way, the officer has been allowed to move out of her apartment, which is supposed to be a sealed active crime scene.
Right. If it's a seal,
I'd throw that out there.
Right. And let me interrupt you right quick. And when we, like I said, when we get to talking about certain legalities of law enforcement and the law, now understand something. When a crime takes place, say in your home, you are under no circumstances allowed to go back into that area. It's called a crime scene for a reason. You are not allowed to go back in there for any reason at all. You have to get a court order and be escorted to retrieve any and all items because you don't want to appear to contaminate the crime scene, which is apparently sounds like what has happened here. Because any and all evidence that may have been there to say these two people may have been involved in being in a relationship, or that could lead that direction, we don't know. We can't rightfully speak on it.
Let's bullet point this, because this is what's very interesting to me. This is a young man who has his whole other profession. He's an accountant. Let's just say that.
He's an accountant.
For the slow people in the room. Why was there found in his apartment a backpack full of police equipment, bullet point that, a bulletproof vest, okay, and some other police or law enforcement items that has been unnamed, alongside with several grams of seedlings of marijuana? I just want to make sure people can bullet point and pay attention, because the goal is to always demonize the victim.
Right.
What in God's green earth does an accountant who's very successful, who's also a very upstanding gentleman in his community and among his peers, who doesn't own a gun? Let's also notate that. Why would a police grade bulletproof vest, along with a backpack of, as they have listed it, police equipment, which could be a baton, which could be name tags, which could be any number of items which they have not disclosed.
Right now,
it does say police equipment.
Well, here's the thing. Now, let's clarify something. Let's clarify when we police equipment. Now, he could now other than being a youth pastor and a few other things, he very well could have a job working as a security officer in wherever, and he would be allowed to be in possession of a vest, a baton, a duty belt, name tags, a badge, things of that nature. You see how you see how they turn it around when they say police equipment. We instead of being more specific in what we're referencing. Once again, demonize. We have to I know.
And I get that. But I want to make sure that people don't get kind of distracted on some minute details. Most people who understand how much a corporate accountant, or almost at his level, because again, we're not talking about somebody who works at Liberty Tax, okay? This is a person who works for PricewaterhouseCoopers, okay? These are the people who find the 10-cent marker off of billions of dollars. Okay? It would be very unlikely for this dude to need any type of second job. That's what I want to make clear.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it was his equipment or whatever the case is, find that very unlikely, because a person of that caliber, trust me, they're not hurting for money.
No.
The type of things that they're dealing with. Again, PricewaterhouseCoopers is one of the top 6 accounting firms on the planet. When you want to find money and you want to hide money, you call them, you call EY, you call Deloitte, and maybe 2 or 3 others. So trust me, money wasn't him having to moonlight, as we might call it, not necessary at all. At all. But the point that I really want to make is the fact that throughout all of this, we consistently miss the bigger picture. Until there is a definitive policy that makes law enforcement and or the justice system accountable, which goes back to even the Supreme Court. Here's a primary thing that we have to be very conscious of. Barack Obama was a constitutional lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
not a tax lawyer.
No, he wasn't.
Not a music business lawyer. He was, as they have inserted us to believe and to understand, even though no professor who's ever been in Harvard could ever vouch that this man attended any one of their classes. Also notate that. You've had professors who's taught at Harvard for 30 years who cannot pinpoint this man at one class, one study hall. Nevertheless, he was a Constitution emphasis lawyer. But 2 pieces of legislation he failed to make his priority to help solidify the problems that we're still facing today. One problem in particular, he and his butt-bumping character, or his bumping partner, Eric Holder, didn't have the balls to work with, which is dealing with the issue from Trayvon Martin and bringing up federal charges that stem from civil rights violations against Zimmerman and the county of Florida. Ever since that case, if anyone's been paying attention, we've had a onslaught. It's like the floodgates were open. There has been an onslaught of this level of behavior that has become affluent and acceptable, that they allowed to never be addressed. And the way that it could have been addressed is 2 things. Looking at the Dred Scott situation, which dealt with the idea of citizens and subjects. Don't get it confused about the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. Slavery that's an institutional thing. It still never dealt with the classification of the aliens and citizens and subjects that are caught in the crosshairs. It dealt with slavery from an institutional standpoint. It just basically said it was illegal. Well, it's illegal to smoke weed in certain states, but it's legal to buy the papers and to buy the cigarillos in which you fill with weed. Just thought I'd throw that out there. So the legalities is what we can play around with. But short answer is the Dred Scott case has never been overturned. The Civil Rights Bill was only readjusted for transgender people and people with disabilities. The Voting Rights Act was suspended, which means that it's not touched, but at any point in time, it can be revoked. when he had the ability to take that off the books and say, this is something we will never have to deal with again. This is a permanent and perpetual thing by executive order. I'm saying that because while we're talking about and we're glorifying people like Maxine James Brown Waters and Elijah Cummings and Al Green and all these other Uncle Toms that parade in front of us, and including Camilla Harris and Cory Booker, who have just been made the ultimate goats out of, as in the greatest idiots of all time. They set you up for the fall and you didn't even see it. Because when this goes left, your face is painted on, nobody else's. Kavanaugh and a couple other people are setting precedents while you guys are making song and dance.
You know, and I'm glad you and I'm glad you brought that up about Kavanaugh. Now, here's the thing that once again, and this is just to go into reiterate what I've said before in past shows about we still are walking around in a medically a self induced medical coma. The Democrats are pulling everything. They're pulling all the stops out to to prevent this man from being confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. Now here we have a woman from 30 years ago coming out and saying that she was sexually assaulted by Kavanaugh at a dance when they were in high school. Now, the thing about it, the people who said this, the woman who said this happened, the people who were there say they all say the same thing. They have first of all, they don't even remember her being at this party, let alone something like this happening. But see, we knew at some point or another that the Democrats were going to pull some type of wild rabbit out of a hat to try to stop this. Because what's happening is that when this dude, and make no mistake, people, this dude will become a Supreme Court justice. He will get confirmed. Make no mistake about that. And when he becomes confirmed, Trump will have set the United States Supreme Court for the next 70 years to where it will be majority conservatives. And make no mistake, now that you have conservatives, watch and wait. You're going to wind up seeing a lot of things being scaled back, rolled back, brought back to the table and discussed and destroyed. Make no mistake, this is what's going to happen.
I think you're absolutely right. But here's the other part of that. Any black person who still has not done their research to understand that the Democrat Party is the rich uncle who keeps molesting them, you're foolish. And you deserve every bit of what you get. This is not to say that the Republican Party is your savior either.
Correct.
But however, the Democrat Party is without fail the party that has continued to put you in college by molesting you and making you do dark, sick things while you're asleep. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. And I've said this several times. Hillary Clinton is the demon herself. This is the same woman who signed legislation that classified your young black men as super predators. This is the same woman who used reverse segregation to help institute anti black laws in states such as Arkansas and Mississippi. She was a legal underwriter for several law firms. You guys are running around here with this, women power stuff, this Me Too movement. At the end of the day, after this Me Too, U2, R2, D2 BS, she's going to go home to her husband, and you're going to have to figure out how to put food on your table. and you're too silly to understand the difference. The women's suffrage movement hasn't helped you. Remember, at the end of the day, she went home to her husband, and you had to go wash her clothes and still go home and make food at your house too. She got what she wanted. She always will. What are you getting out of the deal? That's the same thing across the board. It's hilarious to me when I see people come back from saying, well, I just went and voted. Okay, well, what did you get for it other than a sticker that says, I voted, which is the equivalent of me of saying, this is my food pen for today. Why did you vote? What did they promise you? When you pledge a vote, you were supposed to get something. You do know that, right? That's an exchange. It's a contract. It's a pledge. Vote is a pledge.
And you would be correct.
So when you pledge to a nonprofit organization that you're gonna give your $20 a month, they promise you that they're gonna send you some sort of flyer about the programming and maybe your name. You jackasses don't even get your name signed. Get us in trouble. Call the Democratic Party. What are they gonna tell you? Well, it's the Republicans. They're just making it hard for us. How stupid does that make you look? We are the most educated country with the most technology, and we're the highest country with the most debt and suicide. Something's wrong with that picture.
I agree.
Richest people are lawyers and pastors in our community. Something wrong with that.
I absolutely agree. I do agree with you on that one. You couldn't said it better. But appreciate you, Georgia. We really do appreciate because the knowledge that the things that you say and hopefully it wakes people up.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Hey, that's my time here on iHeart Intellectual Radio, the Chronicles of Rohn tonight. I hope that you all got something out of that, and we continue to move forward and trying to wake up our minds, because some of us are still consciously, we're conscious, but we're still asleep. We got to get past that. We have to get past that. You know what? I have not forgot. We still got to pay some bills around here. And to my sponsors, Captain Hook, if you want some delicious fish, chicken, shrimp, French fries, and make no doubt. Check them out at 85th and Cottage Grove in Chicago, 103rd and King Drive, also in Chicago, and 159th and Kedzie in Markham. That address actually is 15922 South Kedzie in Markham. To Nubian Beauty of Hair, check out their website, luxuryhairdirect.com/Nubian4. And remember to put the dot at the end of that 4. And in closing, not my monkey, not my circus. See y'all next week.
Okay. Girls hit my bat signal when they know that I'm coming. I say I ain't here for nothing. Now give me that cat woman. As soon as we started stomach pumping, somebody had started dumping. She jumped.